All right. Well, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar today, wherever you are, morning or afternoon. This is a really important initiative that ARIA has started working on a couple of years ago, and it's about multi-generational households. My name is Hope Atwell. I'm the executive director slash CEO of the Asian Real Estate Association of America. And I am joined by really two experts, Donna Butts from Generations United. She's been doing work on multi-generational, intergenerational households for a number of years. So she certainly is an expert when it comes to this topic. And Jeff Zeidelman is with Fannie. He is going to be our second presenter talking about products and services and options for retrofitting homes that would need to accommodate for multi-generational households. And just a little bit of background on why ARIA is embarking on this particular initiative. A few years ago, we were approached by AARP, not because I am getting to be at that point where I will be qualified to get AARP membership, but we were approached by AARP to ask us if we are seeing the number of multi-generational household increasing within the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander community. And it's not just because of COVID, but because of caregiving component for the elderly in our community, whether it's elderly parents or whether it's elderly grandparents. What they have been seeing as a trend is just multi-generational household formation on the increase and on the rise within our community. Interestingly enough, I myself am living in a multi-generational household. Even before the word, I think, was coined, I grew up in a multi-generational household. My Lola, my grandmother, lived with us, and I did not know it then, but we were a multi-generational household with my Lola and sometimes my aunt and my uncles living with us as a family. Fast forward 30, 40 years later, or no, 50 years later, my parents have transitioned living with me in 2021. So I can officially say that yes, I am a multi-generational household. And little did I know that there are a lot of resources for us who are facing multi-generational living, right? Whether it's caregiving for children, and our parents are helping with that, or caregiving for, again, elderly or our spouse or a sibling. This is really important because there are important preferences and safety considerations that we need to take a look at. So with that, let me introduce our first speaker. Donna Butts is the executive director of Generations United. She has been there for over 2 decades, almost 3 decades now. And Generations United's mission is to improve the lives of children, youth, and older adults through intergenerational collaboration, through public policies and programs for the enduring benefit of all. Donna speaks a lot about this particular topic, and she is a strong advocate for intergenerational living and intergenerational connections. Donna has served on 5 United Nations expert panels on this particular topic on multi-generational and intergenerational family issues. She has also served as a delegate to the White House on aging and all of those topics. And congratulations that under her leadership, Generations United received the Eisner Prize for Intergenerational. She's also a member of the National Academy of Social Insurance. So without further ado, Donna, thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
Well, Thank you for the invitation. It's great to be able to be with you folks today and to be able to talk about a topic that's very dear to our hearts here at Generations United. And Jeff, it's great to share a screen with you as well. So thank you. The topic I was asked to talk about was the growing need for intergenerational homes and housing. And it really is a growing need, but it's a growing interest as well. It's very much consumer driven. Just as Hope was saying about her own family, people are realizing in many ways that for many families, it works that they're stronger together. So about Generations United, before I jump into the topic, Hope did a great job of sharing our mission, but we're a national nonprofit organization with a global reach. We were founded almost 40 years ago, and our mission to this day continues to be to improve the lives of children, youth, and older adults. And we do that work really focused in three different buckets: high quality intergenerational programs and practices. We set the bar for intergenerational programs in the country, grandparents and other relatives raising children, and then the use of space and place to connect generations. And that's really where our housing and intergenerational living work come into play. We know through national surveys that it's really what people want. They want to connect with other generations. They don't want to be living in isolation. They don't want to be functioning in isolation. And what's changed and transitioned is that myth of just wanting to live with people who are homogenous or the same age as you are. People realize the vibrancy, the vitalness, and the excitement and energy that happen when we combine generations. They really believe in the benefits. They know that it helps address critical issues in our country. The Surgeon General, if you remember, a couple of years ago, just released a report on one of the growing crises and issues in our country was that of loneliness and social isolation. And people do believe that connections with other generations helps to combat that. And I think what's really important about that is to realize it's younger and older people that are more likely to report that they feel isolated or that they feel lonely. So it makes sense to reach across generations. Now, there is a difference between intergenerational and multi-generational, depending on if you're talking about housing or communities. So oftentimes, as you can tell in this picture, the intergenerational is when people actually connect. It's that intergenerational. Multi-generational, you can be in the same place, the same building, and never talk with each other and have separate activities, separate things to do, but it's that intentional intergenerational. When it comes down to defining households, it's slightly different in that we talk about an intergenerational household as being a skipped generation, like a grandparent raising a grandchild, and a multi-generational household as being 3 or more generations that are under the same roof. In 2011, we issued our first report on multi-generational living, and that was right after the recession. And what we found were people that had come together because of the housing crisis. And then 10 years later, we redid that report in the wake of the pandemic. Now, what was interesting was that so many people talk about people living in multi-generational households. We asked the families, what did they think, what they found? And what the families expressed was very different than what was being portrayed in the media or some of the stereotypes about, oh, it's so sad and people have to live together. And they said, well, sometimes it works. That families may have come together by need because of the housing crisis or COVID, but they stayed together by choice. And I'm going to talk more about that later. But when people thought there was going to be a decline in numbers, what they found was, in fact, the numbers continue to increase because it does work for many households. What hasn't changed is our societal norm that people should be independent. They shouldn't need each other. There's something wrong with that. And we see we're very fortunate because of the richness of culture in our country that oftentimes people bring that culture of multi-generational living, multi-generational households with them. So it is becoming more a norm. These were the families that we profiled in our latest report. Number of backgrounds, differences from somebody you may know, Debbie Allen from Fame, who lives in a multi-generational household or area with her family. to just regular everyday families. So what we found when we did our survey is from 2011, when we first did our report, to 2021, when we repeated it, there was a 271% increase from 7% to 26% of the households reporting that they lived in an intergenerational household. So again, that whole point that it's here to stay. Now, with the report in 2021, as you can imagine, 6 in 10 people reported that they came together because of COVID, because of the pandemic, because of the need that brought people back together, whether it was childcare, elder care, financial. It brought people back together. And so it's like 57% of the people reported that COVID was the reason. Now, what was interesting, though, is 7 in 10 said they intended to continue to live together. That's 72%. They found out for various reasons that it worked for them, and so they intended to stay together. And what we found is that most of the families reported that they functioned successfully, 98%. Now, that's not to say that there's not stress, just like there is in any household. You know, there's always that need to communicate, that need to be clear about finances. There are all the hints and things that help a household to function successfully. So it's not a rosy picture without any conflict, but what they found were ways to make that it worked and that they could function well together. They also found that it really helps in terms of combined household incomes, because what we found was the average was a household income was $100,000, with more than 49%. And they were followed by another 24% where it was $50,000. So that ability to combine resources was also very important and very helpful to the family. They reported that the reasons that they came together, again, the bigger context was COVID, but there was a need for elder care and a need for childcare. And I find this to be really interesting because it's split. It's 34% elder care, 34% childcare. That means that it's that caregiving on both ends of the spectrum. There was also, if you remember back to COVID, tremendous uncertainty and job loss that happened. There were healthcare issues. But then on the positive side, there was that cultural expectation that when we need each other, we're there for each other. And then some people said it was training and education. They found a number of benefits from combining households. They found that it helped actually to strengthen the family bond and relationships. And when you think about generativity, you think about an older generation that has those family stories, that wisdom to pass on. It's much easier when you're under one roof, when you can cook together, tell stories together, share meals together. Made caregiving a lot easier, because when you think about distance caregiving, worried about somebody who's several states away from you, or even an hour's drive from you, is different than when you know they're under that same roof. And it helped a lot of the parents with small children, because the grandparents could help with homework. The grandparents could be the ones that pick the children up after school while people were trying to work at home, or help keep them entertained. So there were various reasons why it really, really helped. Finances, as we talked about, the positive impact on personal, mental health or physical health, taking good care of themselves, maybe being able to have more home cooked meals because there were more people to help cook it, as well as people being able to continue to do their work and pursue their job training or education. So there was a lot about that combining of resources under one roof that was really helpful for people. So again, these were the families that we profiled, because I think the personal stories are what really helped people to see the variety. There was one family whose father had come from India to visit and ended up staying 2 years. And it was wonderful. The parents didn't know what they would do without him. There are other stories where somebody needed some financial support, or where there were health issues, things like that. So the stories, I think, really help to give any report and any statistic life. We had several recommendations in our report, and some of these I'm sure are not going to be a surprise to any of you who are in the real estate business. the housing stock and affordability needs to be increased. We really need to address some of that. And I think Jeff's going to talk a little bit about financing and things like that. Environmentally friendly option. That's one thing that people aren't thinking about. There's a lot of discussion about climate change, about someone's environmental footprint, that sort of thing. And the little bit of looking that's been done at multi-generational households has shown that they're environmentally friendly. It's less of a carbon footprint. It doesn't take, they don't have to have 5 cars. They can have 2 cars. They can heat one house instead of 4 houses. They can not throw out as many groceries because somebody's going to eat it. There's a lot of ways that they have been able to really start to demonstrate that they make environmental sense. It's affordable in terms of high quality child and elder care. We advocate for intergenerational shared sites where elder care and child care are combined, but it really provides a more affordable and high quality care when we combine it. We need to think about this when it comes to paid family leave and flexible work environments to make sure that the workplace is supporting multi-generational households, to make sure that our family leave policies understand that it's not just a traditional parent-child household, that there's more generations, other generations, caregiving needs, and also opportunities. There's a need for more home-based and community-based services so that people can age in place, can stay in place. And then just innovation and intergenerational approaches to education at home, how we educate people, how we should. So that report is available on our website, as well as the recording from when we released it. So you can hear some of the speakers if you're interested in that. But the other thing I wanted to share while I had you for a few minutes is that we have a new report coming out on October 24th. And that's on healthier lives across generations, a blueprint for intergenerational living. So this takes it beyond just a multi-generational household and looks at the different models that have developed around the country that support intergenerational living, whether it's home sharing, whether it's accessory dwelling units, whether it's high rises that are mixing aging families or aging adults, young families, multiple generations, and then using common space to connect generations. Like one of my favorites is in Flushing, Queens. It's One Flushing, and it was built by an Asian activist group, and it intersperses throughout every floor of the high-rise different age groups. And then rather than put the quote amenities in the basement, they put them on the roof. So people want to go do their laundry. They want to go to the community garden. They want to go work out. They want to hang out there. So they've developed space that really helps people to connect. So the report is going to have, I think, a number of programs that are highlighted and also recommendations. We were fortunate to do that work by convening a small group of experts up at Harvard's Design School. And so the Harvard Joint Center on Housing and Leading Age were our partners in developing that. So I encourage you, if you're interested in these types of arrangements and this type of living and this type of community development, to take a peek at that. So I wanted to close just by sharing one quote with you. And if you're interested in accessing any of our resources, it's gu.org. Really, we try to keep it simple and easy. But Margaret Mead, who many of you may know, said, "Nobody has ever before asked the nuclear family to live all by itself in a box the way we do, without relatives, no supports. We've put it in an impossible situation, that we think that a family and that individuals can function without realizing and celebrating the fact that we're interdependent." So thank you very much for your time.
I was trying to unmute myself, but I wasn't fast enough. Thank you, Donna. That was great. I do encourage folks, if you have questions, to type in your questions on the chat or on the Q&A box. But great information here. I think for the most part, at least for me, when I think of multi-generational households, I don't particularly think about childcare, right? And how that helps. And I think expanding what we know and the definition of intergenerational household and multi-generational household has been very helpful in this presentation,
You
Donna.
leave, you leave
Um,
the room, please.
so thank you for that. Any questions from our audience? I'm just going to read a few comments from the chat because I think that this is really important to also talk about. Ivan Choi, who is one of our past chairs, past president, had commented in the chat that multi-generational living actually is part of the cultural normalization. And for our community, for the ANHPI community, and I'm sure Jeff and Donna, you've seen statistics, we have a higher number of multi-generational households. I believe that the Hispanic community has the highest number of multi-generational households. So that is just part of our culture. You know, as I shared at the very beginning, before I think I even realized what multi-generational households was, I lived in one. And Vicky Silvana, who's also one of our past chairs, had commented that she had her parents living with her when her children were growing up. So whether or not we realize it and we want it, it is here to stay, and it's already here. We do have a question, Donna, from Gina Duncan from our Aloha chapter. The question is, how do we encourage development for multi-generational living by our governments? And I believe that she's talking about local governments.
Well, the developers themselves are realizing that this is a trend, and they're starting to build, and they're interested in how they build. And the same with people who have remodeling services. We work with one remodeler who lives in a multi-generational household, and that's 20% of his business is helping people fit their houses. So it's here. We do have to address policy, and in particular local policy when it comes to zoning, to whether or not we're seeing an increase in accessory dwelling units and neighborhoods and communities that are allowing and supportive of that. But when it comes to local regulations, local rules, if there really is a lot that's local. There are also some things that we can do at the federal level. I'm always surprised when I hear somebody from the Housing and Urban Development talk about the fact that the only intergenerational and multi-generational funding stream they have is something called Legacy, which supports a very small number of household housing developments for grandparents raising grandchildren. We need to be expanding some of the ways that we're thinking to keep up with the changes in our society. So I really do feel like the big issue is that we need to push against the fact that there's something wrong, and that there's a strength, just as you said, and just as so many of you know, it's a strength. And we should celebrate and be grateful that there are the number of multi-generational households, and they're increasing in our country.
Thank you. Thank you, Donna. Yes, you know, the streamlining of casitas, of ADUs is very important. I live here in California, depending on where, you know, I guess what you feel about ADUs, but ADUs are greatly popular, but they're expensive. And I think that that's why we have Jeff talking about financing options and even to retrofit a home for those of us who have elderly parents or grandparents for aging in place can be very expensive. So thank you. Thank you, Donna. And I hope to see you again soon and be in a panel with you. And hopefully you can speak at our Diversity and Fair Housing Summit. I don't see any other questions, but it's great that a lot of our leaders are saying that, hey, I too live with my grandparents growing up. So a lot of us, this is not something that is uncommon. It's not foreign. It is something that we just live with and dealt with. So Donna, thank you very much for your time and for the expertise. Is this something that we can share, by the way, your deck on a PDF version and the report?
That's fine. A PDF version is great, and I hope that people do look at it and use it. And thank you again, Hope, for the opportunity to be with everyone today and for the thinking that people are giving to this important topic. And thank you, Jeff. Take care.
Yeah, great. Thank you. All right, so
Bye-bye.
now we're going to transition, thank you, to what are then our options, right? Financing options. Last year, as I've shared with you, my parents transitioned living with me in 2021, and we needed a chairlift installed in our home because of my mother's mobility. Thank goodness for savings and all of that stuff, but there are much more retrofitting to be done and to be completed in homes that really, for safety purposes, for individuals and elderly who wish to age in place. And so, in speaking with Mikkel, from one of our partners from Fannie Mae, I had asked, it's like, what are our options? What are financing options? And so Jeff Zeidelman is going to be presenting some of the products and services that are options, not just for us personally, but also for your clients who are faced with multi-generational either homes that they're retrofitting or multi-generational homes, they're building a casita or an ADU. So Jeff has been introducing Jeff and transitioning to our next speaker. Jeff Zeidelman has been with Fannie Mae since 2010, since he was 10. Just kidding. He has experience in green bonds, loss mitigation, loan modifications, and mortgages, which finance energy efficiency renovations and accessory dwelling units. Jeff is part of Fannie Mae's Duty to Serve team, enabling affordable mortgage solutions to low and moderate income borrowers. So without further ado, Jeff, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. And thank you, Donna, for all that information that you shared. I'm going to talk today about a mortgage product that we have that allows borrowers to finance renovations or finance improvements when they're purchasing or refinancing their home. So why don't you go to the next slide, please? While I'm going to speak about our products, we do have a selling guide that governs our products, and that's the document of authority, so to speak. So next slide, please. What we're seeing in today's housing market and what we're hearing from lenders and borrowers is that there are a number of trends that are making it attractive to improve your home, to make improvements to your home. One is homes are aging. And as you know, as homes require upkeep. We all think that real estate naturally increases in value every year. The truth is obviously that the land increases, but the home needs to be maintained just like a car or, any physical asset. I know I spend a fair amount maintaining my home. I think I looked at it one year, and I think I spent an average of about $8,000 or $10,000, maintaining the home, fixing things, etc. So, we're definitely seeing that homes are aging. The average age of a home in the United States is at 40 years right now. There's not much affordable new inventory. So if you happen to be looking for a multi-generational home, it may be attractive to retrofit your existing home to fit a multi-gen, as opposed to buying something on the market. And there's also relatively low turnover, and that obviously, coupled with lack of new affordable and lack of inventory, makes it much more attractive, or makes looking at improving your home, an existing home, as a really viable option for this. Next slide, please. So the product that we're going to talk about today from Fannie Mae is called Home Style Renovation. And what it does is it allows borrowers to purchase and renovate a home using that first mortgage. So what's unique about this is that usually when you're making improvements to a home, you're getting a second loan, a second loan, or you're putting it on a credit card, or you're using contractor financing to, to make the improvements to the home. And again, what's unique about this is that you're using that conventional first mortgage that used to be 3% mortgages. Now it's about 6%, but you're using that 6% mortgage to finance renovations when you're purchasing a home, and you can also do that when you're refinancing a home. Although rates right now are high, they are coming down, and there will be a point at which it may be attractive to look at refinancing your mortgage. And when you're doing that, that could be an attractive time to say, oh, do I want to, retrofit this home or make these improvements for mobility? Make these improvements for mobility and build it into that refinance. So again, rather than putting it on a credit card, you're making it part of the first mortgage. Next slide, please. So home style renovation is flexible because it's an option for any purchase or refinance, and you can make virtually any improvement. While I'm talking, while for this community, we're talking about mobility, things like mobility or accessory dwelling units or ramps, for example, you can use this product to make virtually any improvement to the home. You could update a kitchen, you could put an addition on. It just so happens that that obviously these improvements that you might need for multi-generational living are obviously within this larger realm of any improvement that you might make. It's affordable because it's bundled into the first mortgage. Again, even though rates are a little high right now, they're probably less than the alternatives, right? Credit card rates are higher than that. A second mortgage rate may be higher. And it's simple because it's, from a lender standpoint, it is, they handle it just like a typical mortgage loan, except after the loan closes, they monitor the improvements that they're being made, and they disperse funds and pay the contractor for those improvements after the loan closes. Next slide, please. Yeah, let's go to that one. Perfect. So you can use home style renovation with Home Ready, and Home Ready is our affordable mortgage product for borrowers with low to moderate incomes. That is, incomes up to 80% of area median income. And you can take advantage of better interest rates, lower down payments, and cancelable mortgage insurance. Our Home Ready product allows for down payments as low as 3%. Next slide, please. You can go up to, again, 97% LTV with this product. The renovations you can actually renovate a manufactured home, and you can provide up to 50% of the materials cost to the contractor when you close the loan. Next slide, please. Okay, so there really are few limitations on the type of improvements that can be met. As we mentioned, it could be mobility improvements or accessory dwelling units, but the requirement is that the renovations have to be permanently affixed to the property. So it can't be, for example, a window air conditioner or something portable that you might take with you when you move the home. And it also has to be compliant with state law, state laws and building codes. So examples might be an accessory dwelling unit. It's interesting. I know Donna talked about zoning that in parts of the country that allows for accessory dwelling units. We're seeing almost weekly. We're seeing cities, counties, or states adopt laws that are similar to California's, where an accessory dwelling unit can be is allowed on any single family property. Of late, I know I saw that Massachusetts allowed it, and Rhode Island followed shortly after. So what this does is it really trumps the locality. A lot of localities may not provide it, but the state is basically saying we're going to supersede that. You know, I'm the messenger here. I don't have an opinion as to whether or not it's right or wrong, but I will say that we are seeing a trend of states that are implementing this. And what this really does is it simplifies accessory dwelling units because because they're, you know, they're grandfathered in. They're allowed on any property. Other examples might be, you know, a detached garage, a kitchen renovation. Again, I didn't specifically list things that might be appropriate for multi-gen households, but you know, anything that, you know, things like things that improve mobility or retrofitting a bathroom to make it more accessible would certainly be improvements that would be permitted here. Next slide, please. We have two types of home style loans. We also have something called home style energy, and I only bring this up because the federal government is providing a fair number of incentives and rebates to encourage people, for example, to put solar on their home or to, you know, replace old windows and such. So we do have a product that is even simpler than home style renovation, where the improvements are limited to 15% of as completed value. And if I may, I want to concentrate on that term, as completed value. One of the things that's unique about this product is that the loan amount is actually based on the value of the home after the improvements are made. So if you're making a change to a home, like adding an accessory dwelling unit that might add value to the home, you actually get an as completed appraisal, or you give the appraiser the specs of what the home will be when these improvements are completed, and they estimate the value of the home. It's also called a subject to appraisal, as if the improvements have been made. So that's an important distinction here. Next slide, please. The way the loan works from a lender perspective is that during the loan preparation stage, the borrower would obtain bids from contractors. They'd select a bid and they'd provide that to the lender, who would build that into underwriting. Once the loan is closed, the portion of the loan that would go to the improvements is placed in a custodial account or an escrow account that is paid to the contractor as the improvements are completed. So the improvements that are financed with the loan actually are made after the loan closes. And then at completion, you verify completion, you disperse funds to the contractor, and and the borrower has a home with these improvements. Next slide, please. I mentioned this, that the loan to value, or the loan amount, is based on the as completed or appraised value. And let's go to the next slide, because it gives an example of what I'm referring to. So here's a purchase transaction where someone's purchasing a home. Imagine you're purchasing a home and you're adding an ADU, or you're completing an ADU. We're seeing a lot of that, where an ADU is partially completed, and you're using the loan, for example, to complete the bathroom and to add appliances to the kitchen, et cetera, or to install a separate entrance. So let's say you're buying a home for $190,000 and you want to make approximately $46,000 worth of improvements. So your loan amount is, you know, the total price that you're going to be expending on the home is the purchase price plus these improvements, are about $236,000. The maximum loan amount that you would be able to get, I'm assuming you're a low to moderate income borrower using our Home Ready affordable product, would be 97% of that total price, that total amount. So in this case, even though you're buying a home for $190,000, you're getting a loan for $228,794 because you're making these improvements. So this is just an example of how, you know, of what a subject to appraisal or the loan amount might be when you're making improvements to a home. Next slide, please. In summary, this is flexible. It can be used with any, it can be used on virtually any renovation product to update a new or existing home. And it's now allowed with manufactured housing. We think it's a choice. I mean, borrowers, homeowners have lots of choices on financing. I know that I received a bid for solar recently to add solar to my home, and it came with financing. So that's one option that I might consider. Or I could consider paying cash for it, or putting it on a credit card, or getting some other type of loan. So what home style renovation is a choice in the spectrum, and we'd encourage borrowers to look at that, in that range. Is this more cost effective than an alternative? As I mentioned, it could be combined with Home Ready, which provides for lower interest rates and cancelable mortgage insurance. It's simple because the loan can be delivered before the product starts, before the project starts, so the improvements are made after the loan closes, but the lender can deliver it. Next slide, please. We do have a page on Fannie Mae that provides a number of resources and, if you will, fact sheets and training. And it's at the URL at the bottom of the page. Next slide, please. I want to thank you all for attending. I imagine there might be a question or two, which I or Donna, I'm sure, would be happy to answer. And I look forward to your feedback. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. It's good to know that there are financing options, both from a purchase and a refinance standpoint. I wish I knew that again well, now I know if I need to retrofit our home for my father, taking care of him, then I've got some options there. One question we had was, are we okay to share your presentation as a PDF as well?
By all means, yes.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. I do have a question, Jeff. Personally, for these renovation options, right? Either for purchase or for refi, what type of paperwork is needed for this? Or are there any type of additional paperwork that is needed to come up with that particular cost?
Sure. Well, you certainly would need a proposal, right? A contract document, a statement of work, if you will, from the contractor who's making those improvements. So it's the borrower's responsibility to, as you might expect, to bring in a contractor and say, this is what I want to do. Can you provide me with an estimate? So that's certainly required. There's also a renovation contract that's executed between the contractor and the borrower. So the borrower understands, the limitations of, understands what the commitment is, if you will. I didn't mention, for example, that homestyle renovation requires that the improvements are made within 15 months of closing the loan. So that might be something that would be in the renovation contract. So, and that renovation contract actually is also executed with the lender, if I may. So,
Okay,
so you can imagine that there would be additional documentation that would reference the improvements, that would, spell out the, the commitment that the contractor is making to the borrower. And there's also at the end of the renovation, there's what's called a completion document that the lender uses to verify that the improvements are completed.
Okay, got it. Thank you. That's very helpful.
I lost you for 1 minute.
From Phoenix. Jeff, many manufactured homes in 55 plus communities are on leased land. Are these financeable? Do they qualify?
Would they qualify? That's actually a very good question. If they are if they are real estate, okay? So, actually, you know what? Let me take that back actually and respond to the group via a chat or an email, if I may. I just want to make sure I get that right. It's a very good question.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Because you did say that in your presentation, this particular financing option is now available for manufactured homes. But I think Kurt's particular question is if it's leased land, will they qualify? So yes, thank you. We would be happy to hear the answer to that question. Vicky Silvano from Illinois, she does have a comment, and she had commented that ADUs need to be passed in Illinois. Many red tape, yes, many laws need to be changed. I know that that was also a comment from Lore in Milwaukee, just ADU laws addressing not just caregiving, the caregiving component, but also addressing really the affordability crisis, right? And adding inventory and all of that good stuff. Are there any other questions from the group? All right. Well, before we do wind down, Mikkel, I don't want to put you on the spot. This webinar has been made possible because of the partnership that we have with Fannie Mae, and this is an initiative that we're going to be continuing on. Mikkel and I had a conversation yesterday, about developing a page, actually a resource page similar to how we put together the housing affordability resource page on our website. So it is something that we're going to be putting a lot of resources from different organizations such as AARP, such as Fannie Mae, such as Generations United. Mikkel, any closing words from you?
Yeah, again, just thank you as always, Hope, the partnership efforts. We love the collaboration. Thanks to Jeff for participating and hearing from Donna. I also served on a panel with her at the Diversity and Fair Housing Summit. So it was great to hear from her as well. But yeah, we can't do this work alone. So again, thank you, Aria, for your continuous and great partnership. And we're looking forward to this work on multi-generational households and aging in place data.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for attending the webinar. It is a topic that we are going to continue on at our national convention and really even beyond that. So for any type of questions that you may have for us or even suggestions on how to really manage this initiative, let us know. In the meantime, have a great afternoon, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the week. We'll see you soon. Take care.